Mr. Williamson,
Here.
Ms. Sachs,
Here.
Mayor Lempert.
Here. And we have several sets of minutes on the agenda tonight for approval. The special meeting on November 9th, the November 12th closed session, the meeting for November 16th, November 23rd, the December 3rd closed session, and the December 7th meeting. Is there a motion to approve all the minutes in block? Moved by Mr. Cohen, seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Any comments or corrections on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And
Any
just
opposed?
a thank you to the clerk's office. Sorry. Thank you to the clerk's office again for turning the minutes around so quickly. It makes reviewing them so much easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we've been meeting quite a bit, so it's more of a Herculean task than normal. Okay, now we come to announcements, and I wanted to start with Council President Cohen. Any announcements for this evening?
No announcements tonight.
Okay, and Councilman Fraga, any announcements?
None, Mayor, thank you.
Okay, and Councilman Niedergang, any announcements tonight?
Yes, I do have a couple of items. Two items that I'd like to announce on behalf of Sustainable Princeton. First, they'll be hosting a recycling event to collect styrofoam, batteries, and other kind of post-holiday items on January 9th, which is a Saturday, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Monument Hall. So save your packing materials, especially your styrofoam, and you can get rid of it there. And second, and this will come up in a little bit as we talk more a little bit tonight about our sustainable landscaping project. Sustainable Princeton is working with the Princeton Public Library to do a presentation on that grant and how we're going to implement that. The title of the program is Changing the Landscape, and that will be Wednesday, January 13th at 7 p.m. And it'll introduce a larger public to the work that Sustainable Princeton, its community partners, Quiet Princeton, the Civil Rights Commission, various other community groups working on this sustainable landscaping project. So put it on your calendars. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman Williamson, any reports or any announcements? Apologize.
None tonight, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And Councilman Lambros, any announcements?
None tonight, thank you.
Okay, and how about you, Councilwoman Sachs?
Yeah, I'd like to announce that on December 30th, we'll be having our last council meeting of the year at 7 p.m. And it will be a very short meeting, and starting between 7:15 and 7:30, depending on how short the meeting is, we will be having a farewell for Mayor Lempert. And so people who are interested in coming and talking and sharing at that meeting and participating, we welcome you to come and join us and have a sort of a holiday event farewell. And then we'll be having a more formal event for Mayor Lempert in the spring when we can all be together outside, and we'll fill you in more on that in the spring. So.
Thank you. Let's see, I have a few announcements. Number one, we're gonna have a special meeting tomorrow night, a celebration of many of our community partners. And that will be tomorrow at 6 p.m. Where normally council does an honoring of a group or individual every month, and we suspended that tradition back in March, thinking that we'd only have to suspend it for a month or two while we weren't meeting, and then we would bring it back. And of course, the year turned out much differently than we were thinking back in March. And so the whole year has practically gone by, and there's so many groups that in our community that have been doing really amazing work that we want to honor. So if you're free tomorrow, we invite you to that meeting at 6. Also, municipal offices are going to be closed at the end of this week, Thursday and Friday, for the Christmas holiday. If you normally get your trash picked up on Friday, It will not be picked up Christmas Day, and instead you should put your trash out for the 26th, and it will be picked up then. Okay, and Ms. Stockton, any announcements from engineering?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Just an update on the council agenda. We had previously planned to have a public hearing tonight for the confirmation of sanitary sewer assessments for Van Dyke and Snowden Lane properties that were benefited by the extension of a sanitary sewer line. We've needed to pull that from tonight's agenda, and we will send out new notices to each of the benefited property owners with a new date in January.
Okay, thank you. And that reminds me, I had one more announcement, which is Resolution 2407 on tonight's agenda is going to be held, and that's the report on the Hamilton-Wiggins corridor study. And so the presentation on that will be happening in 2021, hopefully early in 2021. So if you're here only for that, wanted to just let people know at the top of the meeting. Okay, so now we come to, are there any other staff announcements before we move on to public comment? Okay, if there's not, then we'll move on to public comment. And if you would like to make a comment about something that's not already on the agenda, if you can please raise your hand, and we'll start with Tony Lunn.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. Can you see me, or am I just a disembodied voice?
You're
Disembodied
attached
voice.
to your name, but we do not see your face, unfortunately.
Sorry about that. Okay. I guess that's the new way of doing things. Good evening, Council. I am Tony Lunn. I am a co-founder of Quiet Princeton. As you know, we focused on gas-powered leaf blowers for some years. The need for change is becoming more urgent. I know that a number of you on Council want to take action, and we much appreciate that. This evening, I'd like to touch on 3 important topics as you consider this further. First, social justice. This is very important. At first, some have a fear that hard-working landscape workers may lose their jobs. But when people understood the appalling conditions in 19th century factories, they didn't say, we cannot change these poisonous and dangerous conditions, workers may lose their jobs. It's our landscape workers who, hour after hour, day after day, are closest to the literally deafening noise and terrible pollution. That is the social injustice that needs to be addressed. Jobs will not be lost. Lawns and gardens will still need to be maintained. Jobs will become safer and healthier. Secondly, how do we effect this kind of change? We've devoted much consideration to this subject. We at Quiet Princeton now advocate, and I offer this to you, a dual strategy in which both components are needed. The first is an educational program to facilitate a transition. Sustainable Princeton has developed an outstanding, I think, leading program for this. It vastly expands Quiet Princeton's earlier modest efforts. We're very fortunate to have Sustainable Princeton. The second component we consider is a carefully developed, phased-in ordinance. We have actually developed recommendations for the structure of such an ordinance. We can present these at an appropriate time in the future. The point is, both components are necessary. Neither alone is sufficient. We know from our hard experience that a voluntary program alone will be of limited efficacy, and an ordinance alone will be difficult for landscapers to adjust to, although hundreds of towns have taken that blunderbuss approach. Princeton can do it better. Thirdly, and last point, when do we start work on the ordinance component? Sustainable Princeton is already getting underway with its part. We recommend early initiation of work on an ordinance in parallel with the Sustainable Princeton program, which is going to make great progress in the first half of 2021. This will provide an alert that change is coming. It should greatly increase what is a presently slow uptake of interest by landscapers to enter Sustainable Princeton's program. So each of these dual components help the other and should be moving along together. The ordinance can't be finalized until Sustainable Princeton reports, of course. To conclude, as Machiavelli observed 500 years ago, change is not easy, but once it is effected, people are happier. Smoking bans did not put waiters out of a job. Seat belts can be worn. Dog poop can be picked up. The noise of a jet plane and the pollution of a 19th century factory are not acceptable. Better alternatives exist. We can make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I make a comment on that? Just a quick one. Normally when these new issues come up, I like to do my own research on these. I have not had the chance to do it on this particular issue in particular, but one of the questions that came up for me, and it was something really for our attorney Trishka, is, well, I did not find out if other towns are doing this already. Mr. Lund just mentioned they are doing that, so I just didn't get a chance to really do my own research, so to speak. But one of the concerns I had was, and I wanted to pose this to Trishka, is whether if there's any preemption, legal preemption on this type of issue, where how much power does the town have to act on this? You know, when you think about things like plastic bag bans, et cetera, there may be some legal preemption in there. So this is my long-winded way of asking if there's any legal preemption here.
Off the top of my head, I can't answer the question, but I have the same concern that you've just articulated, and it's certainly something we'd be happy to look into, you know, starting with the state's noise regulations that are issued by the DEP, and there may be some other statutes at work. On the other hand, you know, there is a fair amount of authority that municipalities can exercise locally to address local problems, as long as they're doing so reasonably. So it's a very long-winded way of saying I don't know.
But there are a number of towns. There are a number of towns in New Jersey that have already enacted ordinances on this. So I can't imagine that. I mean, there are, I think, quite a few towns. My understanding is that the Environmental Commission is working to come up with an ordinance that maybe builds on some of those ordinances and expands. But I don't think that there's a question that we have the right to do it.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, Councilwoman Sachs, because you know, it's good until someone legally challenges it. And so the thing is, I don't know if that's happened in these other towns.
Well, if it can happen, it will certainly happen in Princeton. You know?
Okay. I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's okay. I also just wanted to let folks know in terms of like the order of when an ordinance gets created, that's the very last step, because it requires bringing our attorneys in, and at that point you don't start with the ordinance and then haggle over it. We really have to come together and figure out principles that we want to go in an ordinance. That's the first step, and that's what Sustainable Princeton is helping with their outreach and the Environmental Commission and these community conversations. The very, very end of the process is the actual drafting of the ordinance, and that needs to be specific to how the rest of the Princeton Municipal Code is written so it can fit in an appropriate manner. So just, I know there's a lot of activists on this call, which is really great, but in order to be effective, I think it's helpful to know the process, and the process is the ordinance is the final step after a bunch of prior steps that involve community outreach, community debate, maybe even a work session at council. Okay, so moving on, next is Martha D'Avila.
Hello, Mayor and Council.
Hi.
Happy holidays. Nice to see you all. I had contacted Councilwoman Mia Sachs recently about the subject. She suggested that I write an email to you and some other members of the council, but of course I never got around to do it, so I figure I'll just ask you tonight. Do you have any updates on what is happening with the properties on Clearview? I live on 46 Clearview, so we were very much involved with what was going on with the development at the shopping center, the possible development. So we're also curious to what's happening with those properties on Clearview, number 8, number 14, as well as the EMS building. The number 8 seems to be empty since the EMS office has moved to the new building. Obviously, the EMS building itself is empty, and 14 seems to be on and off occupied. And we're just curious because we kind of don't want to be surprised about another development on the street that we're not aware of. So I know that maybe you don't have great insights into that yet, but just the fact that that house number 8 has been sitting empty when we have a lot of, issues with affordable housing needs in Princeton. I'd be curious if anybody could give us an update on what's happening.
Yeah, definitely we can. And I see that Council President Cohen's hand is up. And I just, before I turn it over to him, there's sort of short-term uses for those properties and then longer-term uses for those properties. Short term, actually, there's a resolution later on the agenda tonight for one of the buildings to be used for the First Aid and Rescue Squad housing. And then long term, there's a committee that this is one of the things that was deferred because of COVID for this year, sort of really digging into future uses for that property. But Mr. Cohen, did you want to answer as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out there's actually a second resolution on tonight, which touches on that. Basically, I don't remember which number it is, but we're asking the planning board to study whether a redevelopment area is warranted on a number of sites, including the wooded site north of the shopping center itself, Grover Park, not because we're intending to build on Grover Park, but because it's seen as an amenity that could be related to these other development areas. And finally, those 3 properties, the 2 houses and the old PFARS facility, are included in the area that we're asking to have studied for designation as an area in need of redevelopment. So that's, again, a long-winded way of saying that the next step for figuring out what's going to happen on those properties is hopefully designating them as a redevelopment area and then preparing a redevelopment plan, which will have lots of opportunities for public input as we try to figure out what makes sense for the whole area that I just described.
David, would in the meantime, would the town consider having that house rented out, or it just feels like it could be a place that could be utilized for the time being?
Right. So as Mayor Lempert mentioned, there is a resolution again on the agenda for this evening. PFARS has requested that they be allowed to use it and occupy one of those 2 houses. Reading between the lines, I assume it's because the overnight facilities they have at the new PFARS building do not permit enough social distancing.
I see, yes.
So they're wanting to spill over into one of those houses. That resolution is for the first half of this year.
All right.
But
it's just good to see it being used, because
yeah,
how it's sitting empty. The other thing that has been happening quite often is service vehicles have been parking on the EMS. So I'm not sure if that's just like town, because there was road construction, so some vehicles have been parked.
Yes. So there's a corollary to the law of physics that nature abhors a vacuum. The corollary is that our Department of Public Works abhors an empty parking space. So,
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
know that there has been the conversation through the grapevine that that space could be used for public works. I strongly encourage you not to consider that.
okay.
Very sad.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you
That's
very
it.
much.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks.
If I may add quickly to that, Mayor, and there are also different groups competing for different possible uses for those spaces. Just wanted to add that.
Right, thank you. Bainey, sorry. Go ahead.
Am I on now?
Yep, you're on.
So I'm going to try to talk really quickly because I know there's only 3 minutes. First of all, I just want to thank you, Mayor Lempert. I'm not going to be able to attend your going away. And so I just want to thank you for your 8 years of service. In the 8 years that you have been mayor here, I don't think once have I ever sent you an email and you not replied. You've come to some of my events. You've made time in your schedule. You've handled uncharted territory of consolidation with no roadmap. You are polite and professional, politically astute and smart. And I will never forget what you and Jeff Grosser did. I have great gratitude for helping me when my son was diagnosed with lead poisoning. With respect to eco policy, and I have to be honest, I would give Princeton an F-. That is because we have done work, but we would deserve a C. But because we are Princeton and we are the Princetonians, I think our record isn't good. And the whole reason it isn't good is mostly because of Sustainable Princeton. Sustainable Princeton has a conflict. They essentially are the government and they function like the government. You, Mayor Lempert, served on their board. Mia Sachs served on their board and now is what's called the council liaison. This independent nonprofit is invited to every meeting and everything green that happens gets funneled to Sustainable Princeton. Sustainable Princeton pays $0 to the town in rent or utilities. And since I've been a resident here over a decade, they've received at least $300,000 of municipal dollars. They have also received almost all of the Sustainable Jersey funds. I don't have the exact number, but I'm going to say it's, probably it was close to $10,000, I'm sure, a year, much more than that. In addition to that, a Bloomberg grant of $100,000 was given to the chair of Sustainable Princeton, and they were paid to write a climate action plan and lifted or borrowed a memo that was written by the volunteers of the PEC, and the chair who wrote it had to gently remind them that free volunteers had actually written that memo. In addition to being conflicted, and I'm not the only one that thinks that, there are many people who feel this way, the organization I felt had a culture of toxic positivity and secrecy. And I'll explain why I feel that way in a few quick seconds. They always are pushing education, and I'm not saying they're not a good organization. I worked for them as a volunteer for 4 years and raised $10,000 to do a project for them. There's plenty of work for all of us to do, but they either have to decide, are they part of the government or are they an independent nonprofit? They have a good staff, they get plenty of grants, but we continue to fund them. With respect to plastic pollution, that movement started here in Princeton. I know because me and Stephanie Chorney, who was the head of the PEC or co-chair, and Daniel Harris wrote a good ordinance in 2011. This is one of the only towns that has not passed an ordinance. And when I reached out to Councilwoman Sachs before she was on council, she said not to worry, it's a done deal. It still hasn't happened. With respect to compost, we had the only compost program in the state, and it was left to fail. I went to visit the facility, and when I came back, I alerted both Diane Landis and Christine Symington that the facility would close, that it wasn't being run properly, and that it smelled. And both of them came at me with toxic positivity. Let's not tell anyone. You're going to damage the program. I would advocate that transparency and authenticity and integrity are always better. Even if we were throwing the food into the trash, we could have just let residents know. And when it came to the compost, every single organization, every single green activist that I know came out and spoke against it. Councilwoman Sachs, who served on the board of Sustainable Princeton, was against it, but she was running in a contested race. And so she didn't want to be overly aggressive. So she contacted me and I wrote a letter and I spoke at council. And Josh Zinder, whose recommendation we followed, was invited to be on the board numerous times and refused because he too felt there was a conflict of interest. I'm not going to debate the conflict. I think it would be better to just open up the door, so to speak, and look at all the facts and let the residents decide. With respect to recycling, I was told by Councilwoman Sachs on a public social media site that it was silly nonsense to recycle. Her rant is what I would call inappropriate.
Okay. So I don't mean to interrupt, but I would like you to try to come to a conclusion, because
Believes it's not my battle, Mayor Lempert. There's other groups that are going to handle that, but I will tell you that you're not a Princetonian just because you're third generation or you're rich or you're on council. You're a Princetonian if you live here, whether you rent or you own. And I would direct Councilwoman Sachs to talk to Eve Niedergang, who's been incredibly inspiring and had the courtesy to send a beautiful letter to Dr. Chorney and I thanking us for 10 years of work. We need collaboration. We need people to be polite and to be kind, and calling other members of council carpetbaggers, stupid. They're not Princetonians isn't going to build collaboration. We're never going to have an ordinance unless we follow the lead of other towns. We're the only town that practically in Mercer County that didn't pass a plastic bag ordinance. You don't start with an ordinance, but if you have residents that have worked on an issue for 20 years, as we have on the glass blowers, why are we starting with an education program? There are fact-based studies that those landscapers are facing irreparable harm, and it is your job as council to protect them. They have no voice, but they have me, and I am going to advocate for them. And we need an ordinance. We need a three-pronged approach. We need an ordinance, we need an enforcement strategy in the ordinance, and we need a toolkit. And I have already created all of that. I don't know why it's going to take months. I've created a Hey Neighbor letter. I've talked to my neighbors. We need an ordinance. My neighbors to the right are lovely, and they've told me if voluntary programs work, Bainey, we wouldn't need someone to enforce the parking meters. So if there's an ordinance, he will ask his landscaper not to use the blowers. If there's no ordinance, he's not doing it. And my mayor to the left, resident neighbor to the left, she's not interested. So please consider doing what needs to be done. 20 years ago, the borough was looking at an ordinance. I will work with the PEC and anyone else. I certainly don't have an issue with Sustainable Princeton, but they function as the government, and they are never going to advocate for anything that the government doesn't agree with. And we've seen that with plastic bags and with compost. I'm wrapping up.
Okay. Oh, I don't know if I just froze.
No, you didn't freeze. I'm
Okay.
done. I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Before you concluded with the end of your statement, I feel like I'm compelled to respond to some of what you said about Sustainable Princeton, because they are a partner that the municipality works with closely. And we do have several partners that are like Sustainable Princeton that I would define as having a special relationship with the municipality. And I would include in there Princeton Community Housing, who is a routine partner on affordable housing projects and managing many of our rentals. I would include the Princeton Senior Resource Center, who we partner with for services that we're providing to seniors in our community. Neither one of those are officially part of the government, but they are strong partners, and both of them are housed in or near Monument Hall. And so it is, as the government, it's like, I think we recognize we can't do everything ourselves, and that we are just incredibly fortunate to have an organization like Sustainable Princeton. We would not have made the progress that we've made with sustainability and environmental issues and the climate action plan without their help. So, and we do have a contract with them. There's nothing secret going on at all. And just as we have a contract with Princeton Senior Resource Center, just as we have a contract with Princeton Community Housing. And I think it's inappropriate to call into question their integrity. So I felt compelled to say something about that. And likewise, it's, everybody on the council works extremely hard, and everybody on council deserves to be treated with respect in public comment. So moving forward, I hope we can all abide by those rules. Next, Robert Wright.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about the leaf blower ordinance. So I work at home, so I have, my own reasons for sometimes finding the noise from the leaf blowers annoying and for favoring an ordinance. But one thing I've noticed is that when I talk to people in town who don't work at home, they like the idea. I mean, they're like, yeah, less noise is better. When you remind them that the leaf blowers make climate change worse and quite possibly damage the lungs and the ears of the workers, they're like, yeah, what's not to like? And in kind of asking around, I've gotten the sense that probably the major source of opposition to an ordinance comes from the landscaping companies. And I'm sure they say this would, cost a lot of money. I'm a little skeptical. It would definitely cost money in the long run, but they are one-time costs. Fuel costs would presumably go down in the long run. There would be new logistical challenges. They don't yet have batteries that last all day, but I'm sure they'd work something out. They would probably say to customers who have external electrical outlets, which is most of them, if you let us recharge batteries while you're working on your house, you get a little discount, or maybe they would just plug in the leaf blower itself, and they would work it out. So, if I owned a leaf blower, a landscaping company, I'm sure I would oppose this because it is a hassle. But I guess a question I'd ask is how many of your constituents own landscaping companies, right? Can't be many. Probably most of the owners don't even live in Princeton. So it seems to me that this is kind of a classic case where a worthwhile policy encounters resistance from a small but influential interest group. And in that way, it's like the climate change issue on a national scale, right? Because there too, you have corporate interests who oppose, who cite the costs of change and so on. And in fact, if anything, I'd say national politicians face stronger incentives to do nothing than local politicians, because these corporate interests at the national level have huge amounts of money to give or withhold to politicians. So I guess I would just say, I don't know what it's like to be a municipal politician. I'm sure a lot of pressures bear on you, but I would say if you oppose a leaf blower ordinance, you might, next time you're watching cable news and you see some congressman standing in the way of climate change legislation, I guess I would ask you to think twice before shaking your head in dismay at how unenlightened they are, because it just seems to me that what's going on at the national level there is what's going on here, which is that it's change is hard. It's politically easier to do nothing. But one reason I find the lack of progress on this issue in Princeton disconcerting is that it just seems to me that Princeton is exactly the kind of town that should be leading the way. People are very environmentally conscious, and they show that in a lot of ways, and they spend time and money showing it. It's an affluent town, and the people who pay for lawn care are even more affluent than the average Princetonian. So in the unlikely event that this wound up raising the cost of landscaping, and I'm sure landscapers claim this. I'm very skeptical, but if it did raise it by 3% or something, I'm sure we would survive the financial trauma. So if we can't get this done, I'm sure it's more complicated than I realize, but if we can't get this done, it just makes it harder for me to be hopeful about meaningful change on the national and global level with the climate change issue writ large. And
thank you very much.
Can I just say just quickly, one sentence. Conversely, if we can get this done, it provides reason to be hopeful about those larger issues. And I think the role of a town like Princeton should be to provide hope and inspiration and show other towns how it can be done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sophie Glovier.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to express on behalf of the Princeton Environmental Commission how glad we are that so many community members are engaging with this issue of gas-powered leaf blowers with the goals of reducing air and noise pollution and addressing the public health issues of noise and fume inhalation. We had a record number of residents who care about this issue attend our meeting last week, setting an attendance record for my time with the Environmental Commission at 45 people. I'd like to give a brief overview of what the Environmental Commission has done on this issue in 2020 and our plans for 2021. In June of this year, the leaders of Quiet Princeton, Phyllis Teitelbaum and Tony Lunn, presented to PEC and the Board of Health on the issue of gas-powered leaf blowers and articulated their concerns about the environmental impact and the health impacts. Recognizing this issue was of great concern to the community, we met with the Board of Health and Sustainable Princeton to determine how to make progress on this issue. Like many across the country, the PEC is committed to a more rigorous environmental justice focus and lens, and wanted to be sure that we developed a solution to the issue that reflected the views of the wide range of stakeholders involved with landscaping. After discussion, we agreed to partner with Sustainable Princeton and other groups to address the issue, and the grant that Sustainable Princeton has received of $55,000 from Partners for Places has been mentioned this evening. I'm really excited that we'll coordinate with a project team that includes members from Unidad Latina en Acción, New Jersey, Latin American Legal Defense and Education Fund, Rutgers School of Public Health, Quiet Princeton, in addition to the municipality's Human Services Department, the Board of Health, the Civil Rights Commission, in addition to, of course, the Environmental Commission. In order to meet the deadline for the grant, the Environmental Commission discussed and committed to working on this issue for 2021 earlier this fall in advance of our normal goal-setting timeline, and the municipality also committed to be part of this grant-funded approach, thereby ensuring the governing body's engagement in 2021. So over the next few months, the partners will gather feedback from the landscaping community about their businesses, and a series of workshops and education will be held. At the same time, PEC will continue work that we've already started, reviewing ordinances that have been adopted in other towns to see what we can learn from them. An environmental, economic, and health impact analysis will be produced to aid the council as it considers the best policy to implement in Princeton. Over the past few years, the Environmental Commission has been involved with the development of several different ordinances. In each case, we have successfully partnered with others to hold community education events to build support and awareness. On issues from stormwater management to backyard chickens, we have followed a process that includes a robust public education program, research on the approaches taken by other towns, and careful consideration of ordinance language. I'd like to put on the record that we look forward to collaborating with the community and the grant partners to do the same on this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa O'Neill.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm Lisa O'Neill, and I just wanted to make a personal comment on the impact of leaf blowers for me. I've lived in Princeton with my family since 2001. My kids went to Riverside, and we love our neighborhood and the library, McCarter, the community auditing program, the art museum, and all the great things that make this community so special. But one problem, which seems to have gotten worse in recent years, is the noise level in our neighborhood due to leaf blowers. I have a personal reason for hating leaf blower noise, a medical one. 10 years ago, I developed a neurological problem, a movement disorder called blepharospasm, a form of focal dystonia that makes my eyelids spasm shut when I'm subjected to certain triggers, and one of the worst is noise. So for example, if I'm out in our yard on a nice day and leaf blowers start up anywhere in our vicinity, and our neighborhood has fairly small lots, so there are many yards close by, my eyes will spasm shut involuntarily and powerfully, and I'll only be able to open them with huge effort and only for a second or two before they clamp shut again. I won't be able to just keep my eyes open normally without effort till the noise stops. Since the blowers are often around for hours moving from yard to yard, my only option is to go inside the house and shut all the windows. Even that doesn't bring relief when the blowers are close by. If I really need to get stuff done, I can hold one eye open, which allows me to read and function, but it's an imperfect solution because without normal blinking, my open eye dries up, blurring my vision, so I have to keep releasing the lid, starting over. But even if I give up and just sit with my eyes closed, waiting for the noise to stop, my face still experiences spasms and muscle tension, which is exhausting and makes my face and jaw ache. Leaf blower noise is not the only thing that triggers my spasms, but it feels especially challenging because there's nothing I can do to avoid it. So it would really make a difference in my life if the town could figure out some way to end or curtail the use of leaf blowers. And I should say, I also share with others the environmental concerns, worker safety concerns, and the simple desire to enjoy life outdoors in peace in Princeton. And I would be happy to pay an additional tax to help fund landscapers who can't afford to make the transition to quieter technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alex Merchant.
Yes. Hi, Mayor. Is this when I should make a comment regarding Witherspoon Street, or is that later?
No, if you can hold that.
Okay, my apologies.
No problem. Look forward to hearing from you then. And I just wanted to make a final call for public comment. We do have a full agenda tonight, so people can make, one more, Eunice Wong, go ahead.
Hi, Council and Mayor Lempert. I know in many ways I'm preaching to the choir here, and I just want to say I'm really grateful for that. I am here to present a petition I wrote 2 weeks ago calling for a leaf blower ordinance, which I understand is the end of a process. My petition has over 375 signers from Princeton. Globally, it has 1,900 signers. And I mention that global number because environmental destruction that begins in Princeton, New Jersey, does not stay in Princeton, New Jersey. This is a global issue, and this is a civil rights issue. Landscape workers who are usually low wage and undocumented are exposed to 100+ decibel noise and inhale formaldehyde, benzene, and smog-forming chemicals. Dr. Robert Myers, an ear, nose, and throat doctor, said, "When I see a crew using gas leaf blowers, I think, 10 years from now, they'll be deaf, and who will take care of them then?" Princeton is a sanctuary city that cares deeply about human rights. We need to act according to our values, and Princeton can lead the way with an ordinance that protects the workers. There are quiet, clean, light electric models, and the technology will only progress. So companies can change to electric, but they'll delay doing this until required, just like automakers resisted installing seatbelts, airbags, catalytic converters. So that's why we need legislation and not just more education and outreach, which of course are vital. But asking for considerate use of leaf blowers is like asking smokers to be more considerate. Like secondhand smoke, the harmful effects of leaf blowers cannot be contained to the user. And according to successful landscape companies that use only electric equipment, battery-powered machines may be slightly more expensive to buy, but they have a much lower cost of maintenance, fuel, and ownership compared to gas, and they do the job effectively. Harvard and the Smithsonian, for instance, both use electric equipment to maintain their grounds. Maplewood Township Committee member Nancy Adams said that landscaping companies in Maplewood, New Jersey, are actually saving money because of their ordinance by not having to maintain their machines or buy fuel, and they're spending less time at each house. And last week, resident Dayala Ghazal was told by a blower crew that they had been paid to operate their blowers for 60 minutes, whether there were leaves or not, and there weren't any, and they were going to do just that. And that's the definition of absurdity. Through history, every transition to a cleaner, safer world has been met with controversy. No smoking policies, installing seatbelts, airbags, catalytic converters, unleaded gas, banning DDT, smokestack controls, and now dirty, toxic leaf blowers. And afterwards, people always asked, why did we wait so long? I know we all want to be on the right side of history, so we need a leaf blower ordinance and not just education and outreach in 2021. Thanks.
Thank you. And Tina Clement. You can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry. We just got on your Zoom. I'm not sure if you've done the Witherspoon ordinance or not.
Not yet. Just hold
Oh,
on. We'll come to you in a minute.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on items that are not already on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and I want to thank, oh, go ahead, Ms. Niedergang.
Mayor, I just wanted to make a quick statement about the leaf blower ordinance and the landscaping initiative. I said this already at PEC, at the Environmental Commission, but I just want to make a further pitch to people who are not, were not at the PEC meeting, but are concerned about this issue, which is this is going to be a process. It is going to take some time. I think the wonderful thing about this is going to be a model for of using social justice, racial equity, and other really vitally important tools in constructing our policies. And it'll, I think, be important not only here in Princeton and be a model for us to do other similar types of work, but I think throughout the state and maybe around the country. One of the first ordinances I looked at, and I also spoke with Nancy Adams in Maplewood, who was very helpful. You know, they did not think about what the impact was going to be on their landscapers. And I'm really glad to know that the landscapers are adapting and thriving, but that's not how I personally want to do this. It's easy to stomp down on those who have little power, who are really struggling in this pandemic and who have very small businesses with not a lot of capital available. How much harder it is to find out what they need, what they want, and how we can work with them to ensure that the people who work in these businesses are healthier, that we protect their ears from the noise, that they have masks to protect them from the fumes. I know that this is going to be a longer process than many of you want, but I think at the end we're going to have something that we are all so proud of, and I welcome you on that journey. And just while we're on that journey, I would just urge you, if you don't practice sustainable landscaping on your own property, there are companies that will do that. You can mulch your leaves instead of having them blown to the curb or raked to the curb or whatever. They're a wonderful resource that should be utilized. And if you personally already do that, or you have a very small property and only have 3 leaves, you know, reach out to your neighbors. I plan on doing that on my block. I'm the only one who doesn't have a pile of leaves in front of my house, and I plan on reaching out to my neighbors and introducing to them the idea that there are alternatives. And not everyone will be receptive, and I understand that. And that's not your job. That's our job. But I think in the intervening months before we reach the end of this process, I think there's still good work that can be done. If we had 370 people sign this petition, and each of you can convert 1 or 2 people to not using leaf blowers, that would be a tremendous reduction in the amount of leaf blowers in our town. So I'll just leave you with that note, and thank you for your energy and your passion. And, you know, and I look forward to seeing you at every step along the way of this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on now to reports, and we'll start with Council. Council President Cohen, any reports this evening?
Thanks, Mayor. Just 2 very brief reports for the Pedestrian Bike Advisory Committee. We met last week. We have our goals for 2021, which I'll share with the rest of Council as soon as possible in preparation for our goal setting meeting in January. And they also have been working on a memo to share their thoughts on the Paul Robeson Wiggins Hamilton study, which was on the agenda originally for this evening. That has been put off until January, but I still think that the memo will be informative to members of council, and I'll share that with you as well. And it will be available online for members of the public to see when we do take that resolution up in January. For the Flood and Stormwater Committee, similarly, we met, I believe it was last week. We have our list of goals for 2021 and have started work on one of them, which is to create a subcommittee to study the possibility of a stormwater utility in Princeton. And I won't go into great detail about what a stormwater utility is, but it's basically a different way of funding improvements to stormwater infrastructure in town, and something that I know many of our residents are super concerned about, because we all know that with climate change and increased severe rain events that we've been seeing throughout the Northeast in the past decades, that we're seeing a lot more flooding, and we really need to take a new approach to trying to manage it and help our community be resilient. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Fraga, any reports?
No reports tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Ms. Niedergang, any reports?
I'll just say real quickly, in addition to the landscaping process that has been outlined by Sophie Glovier of the Environmental Commission, the Environmental Commission will also be working on developing energy audits of buildings that will hopefully move forward this year. And the electric vehicle charging ordinance is also on their list to finish up. And there were some other things, and I apologize, I didn't bring the full list with me, but like David's committees, I think all of our boards, committees, and commissions are formulating their top 10 goals for 2021, and we'll be talking about that early in January.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williamson?
None, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Lambros?
I'll just mention that when the Economic Development Committee met, we had a very full agenda. And one of the things we're putting on the agenda is to create a subcommittee to look at the allowable uses and how we might be able to be more flexible and look at the future of what retail experiential types of businesses can be in the future, facing the vacancies we're facing now. And pretty much, I think half the committee put their hand up to be part of that. So we'll be working with staff, and it's really terrific. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Sachs, any reports?
None tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I just had a few reports. The first is our health officer gave a update at our last meeting, but I just wanted to reiterate the message that the COVID case count here in Princeton is at its highest level now. I think last Friday we were at that peak, the highest weekly and bi-weekly total to date. And that is largely probably coming off of Thanksgiving. And now we're heading into a new set of holidays. And I just can't plead enough with everybody. I mean, I think Princeton in general has been doing an amazing job, and people have been doing the right thing. And it's, getting together in an indoor space for a party is so dangerous, and it puts yourself in danger. It puts the people you're with in danger, and it's really endangering our community and our medical system. The health department and the hospitals, we've just started to get vaccine coming in, and that's a major operation to try to figure out how to get this vaccine out. And if we're dealing with another surge because of the holidays, it's going to set everything back. So just a personal plea, if you have plans that are not in line with the CDC guidance, please cancel them and explain that year is not the year to push the envelope on this. And it's, the end is really in sight now. The first vaccine was given out in New Jersey last week. And the Princeton Health Department is working with several of the other health departments within Mercer County to do the vaccines. The first round is going to be going to our PFARs, our EMS folks. And there's going to be vaccines that are going directly to the long-term care facilities. Those are expected to get there on December 28th. And then the next phase is going to be seniors that are 75 years and older, and frontline essential workers, and that includes first responders, teachers, public transit employees, and grocery store staff. And then after that, it's considered, there's 1A, which is the hospitals, the long-term care facilities, and the EMS. The 1B was the seniors over 75 and frontline essential workers. And then phase 1C is going to be seniors between 65 and 74 years old, people over 16 who have underlying health conditions, and other essential workers. And to find out more information about that, you can visit princetoncovid.org, and also the State Department of Health has information about the vaccine. And finally, just wanted to put in a plug. The Princeton Health Department is looking for people to help them with the upcoming vaccine clinics. They're looking both for medical personnel, and then also they just need help with data entry, with helping to manage the line and the crowd. So if you're interested in that, please go to princetonnj.gov, and there's a sign up form there if you're able to help. But this is going to be a major operation, and we're starting to get to the final stages. So we're ready to distribute the vaccine when we get it. Okay, are there any staff reports? Seeing none, we'll move on. And we have several public hearings tonight. The first one is Ordinance 2020-51, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton regulating traffic movements on Witherspoon Street and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1964. And at the meeting when this was introduced, we had a pretty detailed presentation, but I wanted to ask Ms. Stockton if she can just walk us through the main pieces of this ordinance, please.
Of course, Mayor. With this presentation, we are requesting the authorization to establish a one-way northbound operation on Witherspoon Street between Nassau and Spring Street. This would make the current operation that is occurring during the COVID outdoor dining season permanent. We are not at this time seeking any approval or changes to existing parking or loading zones within the space. This is specifically just for traffic movements to make permanent the one-way operation.
Okay, thank you. And can you just preview us, if this is passed tonight, if you walk through what the schedule might mean, what the process would be going forward.
Sure. So we've previously met with the New Jersey Department of Transportation, who has jurisdiction on Nassau Street as it is State Highway 27. They are aware that council is evaluating and considering this change to the operation. Whenever we make a change to an intersection or part of the right-of-way along a state highway, we need to get a state permit for that. So after the ordinance is finalized, we will forward that to the state because coincidentally, they also have a concept development study underway with a consultant to review the Nassau Street, Witherspoon Street intersection. They had already been working on some design proposals to change the operation of the signal because they have received both the municipality's requests for the exclusive pedestrian phase as well as a need to upgrade the signal for a limited site resident. So the consultant will get this information as well, and they will be able to complete their concept development study. That goes back into the Department of Transportation and their capital management program to formulate a project to replace the traffic signal at Nassau and Witherspoon Street. Simultaneously, the town, the engineering and planning departments will be working with our consultant to put together our preliminary and final designs of Witherspoon Street. We have a capital improvement project that extends from Nassau Street to Green Street. We'll complete those plans, submit them to the Department of Transportation with an application, and that application will be to make permanent this change in terms of the state highway. And that typically, they've told us the time frame for the permit process is 9 to 15 months. We will have some advance time needed to complete our plan. So the idea is that we would have our plans and application permit into the state probably by summer. And then we'll work through the permit process with DOT in the second half of 2021, looking for construction in 2022.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Ms. Stockton before we open up the public hearing on this ordinance? Nope, okay, so I know there are a lot of folks that are interested that are here for this. So if you're interested in speaking as part of the public hearing for the Witherspoon ordinance, now is the time to raise your virtual hand. And we also received quite a few submissions over email, but we'll start with the people who are raising their virtual hand, and then we'll end with the written comments. So first is Nat Bottenheimer. Go ahead. If you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Yes, sorry, I was not having trouble unmuting myself. Thank you very much. I want to speak. My name is Nat Bottenheimer, resident of White Pine Lane in Princeton. I want to speak in favor of the ordinance and in support of future actions that would maximize the amount of time that Witherspoon Street is available for all pedestrian activity. But I just want to stop and say that I think this introduction of this ordinance is terrific. I urge your support for it. And I also specifically want to applaud the council's reaching out to other communities in New Jersey that have experimented with this kind of opening of streets to pedestrians. And I encourage more such outreach to others who have blazed trails around the state that we can learn from. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Stuart Lieberman.
Yes, hi. I live on Western Way, and I'd like to speak in support of the ordinance. The genesis of this experiment, of course, was a horrible, horrible national, international tragedy. But some things good will come out of this, and in a very small way, but a meaningful way, this could be one of them. This reminds me very much of Europe when I go down to that intersection and I see people dining outside and enjoying themselves. And the idea of having traffic flow in one direction would be supportive of that idea. I hope that this is approved at the vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Brian Levinson.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So I'm very proud to present a list of 1,100 names to the council. These are 1,100 people who have signed a petition in support of the Witherspoon redesign. They're residents and visitors, students, professors, young people and old. And I can't really speak for them all, but what I can do is just offer my own personal thanks. I want to thank the mayor and the members of the council for your forward thinking on the issue. Growing up in a North Jersey town with no main street and no downtown core, I can remember that we were always so focused on distance, how far you could travel to relax and enjoy yourself. But today, for my wife and for me and our young son, it's really proximity and place that matter. We've logged like countless hours in Heinz Plaza and Palmer Square, like every Adirondack chair on campus. And I think the Witherspoon redesign is a commitment to place and to people. It opens up the street to more pedestrian traffic and more outdoor dining. It's flexible and smart. It's a reminder that cities and towns are really at the forefront of innovation. And I'll confess that I had not really attended a council meeting before this past month. And I was really blown away by all the expertise and the attention to detail that went into this process. And I want you to know that what you're all doing really makes a difference. I'm lucky to be a teacher in a public high school, and my students are curious and hardworking and community-minded. And high school students know how to build social capital better than anybody I've seen. But too often in Central Jersey, sometimes too often in Princeton, young people lack the social infrastructure, the places and the spaces to really spend that capital. And I think your vote tonight kind of changes that landscape. Your vote tonight takes a regular old street with narrow sidewalks and it turns it into a vibrant boulevard. So I want to thank you for taking the initiative on the redesign and for hearing the voices of all those folks in Princeton and beyond who shared your vision on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tinica Theo.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tinica. I live on Dempsey Avenue, and I would like to support this resolution. I have seen in my previous hometown, Delft, how a square that used to be dedicated to parking for cars was closed off mostly. It became pedestrian mostly. Didn't mean that you couldn't go there with your car, but it was dedicated. I mean, it was primarily for pedestrians. And I watched the place go from this miserable corner, really, to this vibrant place where you could meet your friends and your family. Lots of extra restaurants opened, lots of extra stores, and of course, the paint store that was started there in the 1800s is still there, which is kind of cool. I have noticed that when people make comments or write to the paper, a vast majority of those people that make a comment ask for Witherspoon Street to become all pedestrian. And this includes several of the business owners on the street. I know that the ordinance is for making it one way, but I would like to urge that we start experimenting with an all pedestrian plaza before implementation, just to inform the implementation. And I think, you know, with the way that the vaccination is going, maybe we won't be done until the summer. So I think the spring would be a most excellent time to close off the streets and make it a pedestrian plaza for a Sunday afternoon or for the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alex Merchant.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
We
Great.
can hear you, yeah.
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor Lempert and members of council. My name is Alex Merchant, resident of Lawrence Drive. First, Mayor Lempert, I want to congratulate you on nearing the end of your term. Municipal government can be thankless, but I also know it's an incredible opportunity to help your community. And I want to thank you for your leadership and what you've accomplished in Princeton. Tonight, I asked Princeton to pass the proposed ordinance to improve Witherspoon Street by widening the sidewalk and reducing the travel lanes to 1. These changes will be a tremendous improvement for the heart of Princeton. My wife and 3-year-old always go to downtown Princeton for meals out and walking. We really look forward to these changes to Witherspoon. However, I am disappointed that council is not voting on full pedestrianization or a protected bike lane. Princeton has hundreds of parking spaces within a 1-minute walk of Witherspoon Street. Not going further is a missed opportunity to create a wonderful community space that benefits all residents. However, this ordinance is an important step forward. When downtown small businesses were in crisis, Princeton's government sprung into action to test out a solution. No studies, just trust that the engineering and other staff knew how to get this done. That's the type of action residents want to see from government. Today, council will hopefully enact permanent improvements for Witherspoon based upon the lessons from that experiment. Although WSP's report on Paul Robeson, Wiggins, Hamilton is not on the agenda tonight, I must draw a contrast with Princeton's approach to reallocating street space on Witherspoon with the continued inaction on bicycle infrastructure. We need action on cyclist safety. Princeton is a biking town. Several census groups in Princeton have 10 to 20% of residents who bike to work. Princeton should be keeping these cyclists, like me, safe. Nationally, the number of pedestrians and cyclists killed by cars has shot up 50% since 2009, bringing us back to 1988 levels. This surge tracks very closely an increase in SUV and truck sales and smartphone use, none of which show signs of abating. In the years that Princeton has spent studying cycling infrastructure and the money it has spent hiring consultants, the town could have already installed bike lanes on Paul Robeson, Wiggins, Hamilton. I strongly urge that council approve tonight's proposed ordinance. Reducing traffic on Witherspoon and widening the sidewalks is exactly the sort of action council needs to take to create a safer and happier downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, David Newton.
Hi, good evening, Mayor. I'd just like to echo what I've heard, with dignity and with good humor and with courtesy, who have run this community for the last 8 years. And I'm sure you'll be very much missed. And I wish you every good fortune in where you're moving on to. I would like to add my 2 cents actually against this ordinance. And it's based on the fact that I'm the landlord of the Hamilton Jewelers building at 92 Nassau Street. And I am also the landlord of 16 Chambers Street, which is on the other side of town. And my objection, as far as Witherspoon Street is concerned, is that we're living in a time, as Ms. Lambros indicated, of terrible vacancy in the retail business. And one of the great assets that we need to hold on to is our retailers. And these retailers are living in appalling stress conditions at the moment, given their businesses. And this town feels, and I'm not quite sure why, the need to create a very significant change to the traffic system at a time when people are just reeling in terms of their businesses, or at least they say those businesses that still remain. And so from what I understand is that you have businesses such as Small World, McLaughlin, Hamilton Jewelers, Agricola, and a number of the other businesses. From what I understand, the majority of businesses on Witherspoon Street who are really not in favor of this ordinance. And so given that as the backdrop of what I want to say, my own problem also revolves around Chambers Street, because at Chambers Street, you're probably going to receive a situation where hopefully Graduate Hotel will move ahead with their plans and they will build a new hotel for this town, and a project that I personally am very much in favor of. but equally during the construction phase of that hotel, with it, Chambers Street also becomes very, very congested. And as a result, there's no ability to put a light or a temporary light on the top of Chambers Street. And all that traffic that comes down Witherspoon Street basically will only be able to come out into Chambers Street, causing extra problems. So between stressing the retailers out, who one has to admit have to be considered a great asset to this community, and also during the construction process of Graduate, creating enormous congestion on Chambers Street, I really request at the very least from council a delay on this project until hopefully the retail situation levels off, we find more retailers to fill our stores, and Graduate is up and running. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. This was the timing of this was talked about at the introduction, but part of the impetus to move now is that we do have our own deadlines to meet in terms of being able to access pretty significant funding that that the engineering department has been able to line up for this project. So, delaying it any significant amount of time would mean that we would lose the grant funding for the project. Okay, next is Tina Clement. Oh, I'm not sure what happened to you. Helena May, go ahead.
Unmute. Am I okay?
Now you're both on. So Tina, why don't you go first, and then Helena, you can go second.
Okay.
Can I go second?
Okay, so I'm with Jim Firestone. He'd also like to speak. We are a part of the borough of Princeton. And in 2003, when the downtown development took shape with the parking garage and the library and a few other things, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Anyhow, there were a lot of traffic patterns, and now you say, I'm not sure there've been traffic patterns done, and I'm not sure you have consulted with the residents of this community, which is Spring, Vandeventer Park, Madison, and Moore Street. So if Witherspoon becomes one way going north, basically the traffic all comes to Spring Street, and the tourists want to go to Route 1, which means they have to go out Washington, which is Vandeventer is the extension of Washington. Your report said that there's 7 to 8 minutes of stoppage at the light. I so beg to differ with that, as we sit on our porch and we see people sitting there for 20 plus minutes trying to cross Nassau Street, because that's the only way out of town. And some of them are friendly, some have nice music. A lot of them are really, really angry. And this is not the locals, it's the tourists which come in on the weekend. And you have to promote that. And if they can't find parking or easy access out of town, it's going to be a problem. Also, you talk about bike routes. I'll tell you, I would not ride a bike on Vandeventer Avenue with the SUV, or on Park, or on Madison. There is no room. There is absolutely no, I am all for biking, but there is absolutely no room for a bicyclist. They ride on the sidewalks. You can't go up my street. I don't know. I'm going to turn you over to Jim Firestone now. Are we still there? Liz?
Yep, we're listening. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I want to ask some questions, which is why the big rush to get this through now? Obviously, the traffic that's occurring during COVID is not the same as usual. And already, because of what happened on Witherspoon, I sit on the front porch more than anybody in town, seeing what that traffic is, because nobody else is out on their porch. But believe me, there's a lot of people yelling and hollering and cursing who are going out of town. And that's not that bad so far. I know they go up Chambers Street too. Wait, they go up Chambers Street also. But the question is, are we trying to make a permanent solution tonight to a temporary problem? This is temporary right now. This is COVID. You can't even measure it. Deanna Stockton can't really measure it. This is a whole different time that we have right now. So are we jeopardizing the rest of Witherspoon Street beyond here also, up where Hillier's trying to develop eventually? We don't even know that. And like David Newton said, I agree with him. The merchants don't want it. It seems like pie in the sky again. And it's going to be construction and everything else before it's over. So I ask, please put off the decision at least until things begin to turn to normal, because you can't really measure what's going to happen from this. This is a time of no traffic and it's already snarled up. So thank you very much.
So I also would like to add one thing for the neighborhood. I understand the people in Western Way and the people that live in the township love coming to our town. And I love living in our town, but you're not dealing with the pollution, with the congestion, with the people in the cars. The people in the cars, with the tempers. You're not, it changes the downtown. It totally changes the downtown. And
what works. So.
I forgot a point I was gonna make, but anyhow.
Okay.
I guess you get my point.
Yeah.
I do.
I'm speaking
yeah.
for the neighbors.
We're very frustrated in the neighborhood, and we think you ought to check with the neighborhood first to some degree to see what they think.
Yeah, because it doesn't just impact Vandeventer or Spring. It's Park, Madison, Moore, Wiggins, Hamilton.
And as David Newton says, Chambers also.
And Chambers. Okay.
Thank you. Helena May.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you very much for your service for the past 8 years. It's a very difficult job. So, really appreciate all the hard work that you've put into serve us for the last 8 years. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am resident on Lake Drive, as well as a business owner on Witherspoon Street. And I am here to be in support of the ordinance. Having said that, I want to be mindful of one of the key constituents, which is the merchants, the retail owners who have expressed concerns for this ordinance. One is primarily parking, and two, in terms of their ability for logistics of loading, unloading. With regards to the loading and unloading, I know that as part of this effort, studies that looking at the timing of doing this, exploring when to allow for loading, unloading, and the logistics. And I would implore that the merchants work with the council, work with the committee to establish timing that's good for them. And to also, on that note, to echo one of the residents who said that, let's also look into a study that's to close it completely on the weekends to see the viability of that and how to work it out so that this way it's applicable for, that's viable for the businesses. And secondly, with regards to parking, I know that the merchants, to echo David Newman's points, that the merchants, the realtors the retailers are going through hell right now, and it's not ending yet. And with regards to parking, why not consider increasing the Spring Street parking, the free parking from 30 minutes to an hour as part of this process? And secondly, in parallel, look into increasing the capacity of Spring Street parking deck, as potentially adding additional levels of sorts if parking issue is truly a concern. And I know that wayfinding is something that is already in discussion with the university, so that will help for visitors to identify various parking capacities around Witherspoon Street. But then, those are some of the considerations to allay the parking concerns. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Michelle Moriello.
I'm sorry for the delay. I'm here to speak in favor of the business that they like to have this change in Witherspoon. I'm the owner of La Mezzaluna restaurant, and I can say that after studying all the summer, looking all the way I went with Witherspoon, I see a majority of the community that they want this change, and I'm in favor of seeing if this can be a beginning of more free space in Princeton from cars. I think moving to one lane can be a good start, and I also think that maybe to make sure that maybe all the retail suffering in this town can be changed on creating some outside shopping, because Princeton gives the opportunity for people to walk around and shop. So I think we should look into a good change and a good beginning for a downtown Princeton with less cars. I see that maybe it can be a beginning of creating a large space of pedestrians. So thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak as part of the public hearing before I read the comments? Go ahead, Sam Bunting.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your service. I'd like to speak, about this proposal, and in particular, I want to talk about this idea of the businesses. I was one of the 1,100 people who signed the petition asking for increased pedestrian space on Witherspoon Street. And I think one of the things that those of us who signed that petition really strongly believe is that if you can create more pedestrian space on Witherspoon Street, it's going to make us feel more inclined to spend more time on Witherspoon Street, more time patronizing those businesses, which we already love, and we'd like to spend more time there. Princeton, the unique selling point of Princeton is its sense of place. And to the extent that we can maximize and optimize the ability of people to enjoy that space, that is going to attract more people into the downtown and help to resolve some of these vacancies that we're seeing. I mean, the assumption that the vacancies problem is going to be solved by constantly squishing as many cars as possible as we can into the center of our town, it just doesn't seem right to me, because the thing which we want to do, and I think something which we've learned a lot during this coronavirus crisis, is that we want to spend time together, socializing, different people from different backgrounds, coming together, having the space to mingle, experience, and enjoy everything that Princeton has to offer. So, I understand that there are strong feelings about this on either side, but I really think that this could be a really great opportunity for Princeton's commercial downtown to welcome more people and to find good experiences for people to enjoy in Princeton. You know, there's certain things which in 2020 we can make in China or which we can buy on Amazon, but having a really original and special experience in downtown Princeton is not one of those. I think to the extent that we can try to reduce the amount of traffic in Princeton by converting more space to pedestrian uses, I think that's going to attract more people into the town. So I think this is really, I really genuinely believe that this is going to be a good opportunity for downtown Princeton businesses. I think it's going to be something really enjoyable for the people of Princeton to share, and I strongly encourage you to go ahead with this change.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak as part of public comment? Timothy Hiskey.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm a resident of Cherry Hill Road here in Princeton since 1999. I'm a land use attorney and do not actually work in Princeton. I work in Allentown, New Jersey, where I commute from Cherry Hill Road every day. I would first like to address the traffic issues raised by several people who seem to think that Witherspoon is the only way out of town. It is not, of course. Once they closed Alexander Road with the bridge this past summer, I found it was quite easy to get out of town other ways. I go that way, but in any event, Witherspoon has never been the option to leave town from where I live. I think it might be an option for visitors to leave town, but there are 10 other different ways to get out of town. Harrison Street, Alexander Road, et cetera, et cetera. So traffic wise, I think it is just a straw man's argument there. As far as the benefits of having a pedestrian mall type short street in the middle of town, I think it is absolutely a wonderful idea, and it's absolutely working out very well now that we have seen what the pandemic has done to pedestrian shopping. You know, now that you can't really drive down Witherspoon Street now, it's really working out for those stores there. I grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is another college town and which is an absolutely wonderful town. They don't have that, but they are progressive as well and have done quite a few innovations as well as far as college towns go. Now, I don't understand, and this is the final comment I'll make, I don't understand Mr. Newton's objections. I know where his store is. It's a jewelry store on the corner of Nassau and Witherspoon. I do not see why non-parking with perhaps delivery trucks only in the morning, somehow regulated by ordinance, would ever affect him other than beneficially. You know, in fact, if you ask me if there were a pedestrian non-car thoroughfare from Witherspoon, the library to Nassau on Witherspoon, it would only increase foot traffic on Nassau as well. So there you go. I can't go too much further into it other than those are my opening comments on the question. I really hope the town will consider this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak as part of public comment? Veronica Olivares-Weber.
Hello?
Hi, go
Can you
ahead.
hear me? Yeah, I just want to, my name is Veronica Olivares Weber. I live in 26 Edward Place. And I also signed the petition. I'm in favor of the, of the, to make sure that, I have two girls and I feel, seeing them going to town and, seeing less traffic, having open space for families to walk around our town. Also, I think it's a plus for our local businesses. I feel that, living in a college town where we have so many young people where they go to town and, having not many things to do, given that it's a small town, will benefit all the families who have, young children and adults and even the elderly. And I hope that, he's going to be approved. And also, I want to say thank you to Mayor Lemper for all the work that you've been doing for us and all this for many years. And we really appreciate all your work. And sorry that I cannot have my camera on, but I'm, running errands.
Thank you. And Ingela Kostenbader.
Yes, hi Liz, this is Ingela Kostenbader. I lived in Santa Monica in the 80s when we closed the 3rd Street Promenade, and it was a huge hit. In the end, they actually closed the traffic altogether. But it was fantastic to have a lot of outdoor restaurants, which we haven't had much of here in Princeton. And I think it could be a hit here too, as it is and was in Santa Monica. And I'm totally in favor of it.
Great, thank you. And is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Okay, so I'm going to close the verbal part of the public comment, and now I have several emails that we received that I'm going to read into the record. The first is from Andrew Siegel. As the one-way design for Witherspoon Street seems set to pass this evening, I personally, as a resident of downtown, am glad that we will begin the process of beautifying Witherspoon. It is important to remember, however, and it must be stressed to all who supported this change, there are individuals and businesses who have lost with this decision. It is not good for everyone. It is not good for all businesses, as has been falsely portrayed thus far. Gratefully, all of the parties have had the chance to have their say. There is no doubt about that. But have they truly been heard? When this decision is presented as good for business, it is imperative to make clear that it is, in fact, not good for all businesses. It is good for full-service restaurants who now have more space for outdoor dining and increased capacity for years to come. I am happy for them and look forward to sitting outside and dining with them, but others will suffer. Plenty of beloved businesses on Witherspoon Street made that clear. Small World Coffee, Hamilton Jewelers, Olives, Mamoons, Jules Thin Crust, and Jay McLaughlin, among others, made as clear as possible to our elected officials and our friends who supported the change that this would not go well for our type of business. Even Agricola, Christine's, and Witherspoon Grill joined us as neighbors who would benefit from the change, but who thought that perhaps there was a better way that helped everyone instead of hurting those who rely on Witherspoon as a thoroughfare for their businesses. Lastly, other businesses not on Witherspoon, but who deal with the day-to-day realities of customers saying, I can't get into Princeton, and who would be hurt greatly by a one-way Witherspoon, a no left turn on Chambers, and all the traffic headaches that go along with the changes, chimed in to say, please don't. Quick service shops and fine retail stores will suffer. One need only look at Red Bank or Somerville, some of the towns that were used as examples of this idea working, to understand what will happen in Princeton. Great shops will be replaced by businesses that succeed in pedestrian malls. More restaurants, another bar, maybe a hookah lounge, a t-shirt printing shop, maybe a marine recruiting station like Somerville has, because they can't fill their space with quality retail merchants. This will happen here too. I can speak to it personally as we closed our Hamilton store in Red Bank after years of a healthy mix of local and national shops being pushed out by restaurants and lounges. We were one of the last retailers on our block, next to a struggling clothing boutique and a new Ripley's Believe It or Not store, and we closed to focus our efforts on towns that appreciated a healthy mix of retail, restaurant, service, art, education, and more. Of course, the types of restaurants and lounges that thrive in what Town Council is creating here want to move to places with vibrant nightlife, which Princeton lacks. So perhaps there will just be more vacancies and more empty storefronts for people to walk by or dine around. Maybe you say we want Princeton to become a nightlife destination. And to that, I'd say that sounds great, but not at the expense of our great Witherspoon businesses. The effects of this are going to reshape the CBD. Certainly there will be more space, but at what cost? While this is a blow to business in Princeton, I can at least speak for myself when I say that I'm ready to work with Town Council to ensure that Princeton does not fall to the same fate as other towns who have tried this. Please listen to the experiences of those who understand what it takes to make living here in this town we love. Next is from Jessica Dury, Kyler Road, and also co-owner of Small World Coffee. I would like to make a few comments about the proposed changes to Witherspoon Street. Ideally, this project would be part of a master plan that we strategically work towards over time. There are many interdependent variables that will decide its success. Witherspoon has varied patterns, behavior, and life at different times of the day and the week. Whatever plan chosen requires flexibility that optimizes this crucial corridor in our very small downtown. Flexible design is key. Witherspoon now houses some remaining retail, which we need, quick service restaurants and full service restaurants. Each business has specific needs. Each tenant signed a lease based on very specific dynamics that could change. With this, I urge Council to consider and plan for a model that allows this corridor to continue to house a variety of different kinds of businesses. A diverse portfolio of businesses is healthy for our town. It may not seem that changing these traffic patterns and parking allotments will impact the diversity of businesses that this corridor can support, but it very well may. One of the number one tenets in business is location, location, location. This ordinance will change the dynamics of the location for each of the businesses, some for the better and some for the worse. Please also consider that consumers increasingly want convenience. COVID has even amplified this. We merchants want to respond to consumer desires. Therefore, whatever plan is in place must make it easy for customers to both get in and out of town, as well as find a place to park for quick pickup or leisurely meal and shopping. There's some contradictions in the traffic study. I urge Council to look further into the impacts on all of the other crucial traffic pain points in town. I see it every day during COVID when traffic is significantly reduced. Last, I would love for Council to lean on the local businesses to help refine the details of this plan. In business, success is usually dependent on many interrelated details. It is rarely one big thing that impacts our profitability or strength. It is usually a large number of tiny interdependent actions, choices, and operational movements. I believe if we are included, we can help ensure this change has a maximum impact for all constituents and all of the visitors that our downtown depends on and loves to serve. Thank you. Next is from Dean and Pam Edelman, 11 Aiken Avenue. We would like to express our strong support of a redesign of Witherspoon Street to create a more welcoming pedestrian space. Next is from Renee and Carolyn Obregon, 38 Walker Drive. I'm a resident of Princeton and wanted to write in favor of making Witherspoon Street pedestrian. One of the reasons we moved to Princeton from New York City was its local city feel with some of the attractions of a real downtown. My wife and I are avid users of downtown Princeton, dining in its restaurants, going to the library, shopping in its shops, just going for a walk and supporting local businesses, haircut salons, as are our two boys. One of the things we enjoy most about Princeton is running into friends downtown as we go about our business. That is what differentiates Princeton versus big cities, where you can get lost in the crowd. Everyone's connection with downtown is what makes Princeton so vibrant and a genuine community. There is a win-win solution, and I have not seen it as an option in any of the plans to my knowledge. Why not make it permanently closed from Memorial Day to Labor Day, or from May 1st to October 30th? I would prefer the latter. This allows consumers and the businesses to benefit from a larger pedestrian dining area during times of the year when people want to be outside, late spring, summer, early fall, but then closes down during colder times of year when no one will be eating outside and the local businesses would benefit from closer parking. No one will mind walking 2 to 3 blocks when it is nice outside, but when it is cold, different story. The design of the street could be aesthetic, but safe. An automatic barricade can go up, down, and the street can have safety pop-up built in, seen in security areas to prevent car attacks. This would also allow businesses to take deliveries as times can be set, say 6 a.m. to 8 or 9 a.m. for delivery during the late spring, summer, early fall period when the street would be fully pedestrian. While I prefer a fully pedestrian Witherspoon, I recognize that it also needs to be commercial for businesses so they can thrive, and perhaps the suggestion above is a midway step before fully making it pedestrian. I look forward to speaking publicly at the council meeting where this will be discussed. Dorothea von Molko wrote, "This is the end of a long deliberative process about the future of Witherspoon Street. To what I have said on other occasions about my deep and persistent worry about the unintended consequences of the intended changes, I want to just add this. I wish nothing more than the proponents of the one-way solution to be right, that this will be an all-around boom for the town and for me and the many fellow merchants who share my worries to be wrong. Nothing could be better than if that is how it all turns out. But the overriding motivation that comes through in the testimonies from my fellow residents in advocating for this solution, which remains a solution in search of a problem, is that it will improve pedestrian life. I live in the Littlebrook area of Princeton and walk or bike to my work in town almost every day, all year round. I'm invested in the same pedestrian life. What I believe is this. I have heard and seen the presentation of the traffic study, and it leaves me unconvinced. The solutions to the crucial problems at intersections are all vague. By choking one of the three main arteries through Princeton, we will create gridlock. Incidentally, carbon emissions from idling cars far exceed those from moving cars. This will mean that we will be sitting among and talking about cars and the problems that can come from them just when we are hoping for pedestrians to get away from cars. The same effect will come from any reduction in available parking. The only circumstance under which that won't be true is if these changes lead to enough frustration from people who rely on cars to get to town from parts of Princeton and beyond for them to give up coming. In that case, my and my other merchants' fears about the seriously detrimental economic impact will be realized. I'll say it again, here's hoping I'm wrong." Madeline Lagatudas from 11 Lawrence Drive writes, "I am a mom of a small child. We spend a lot of time walking around town. When we go out to dinner or do anything social, it is always in downtown Princeton. I'm glad to hear that there is consideration being made to widen the sidewalks on Witherspoon and make the street one-way travel lane. I'm disappointed, however, that the street is not being fully pedestrianized, that there's no protected bike lane, and that on-street parking is being maintained, especially the parking. Princeton has seemingly hundreds of parking spots and garages, not more than a minute from Witherspoon." Tom Taylor writes, "I write to support sidewalk widening on Witherspoon Street and the proposal to make the street one way. I note the missed opportunity to center pedestrians by removing cars from Witherspoon Street. An alternative vision of Witherspoon Street would create an exciting and unique town square-like atmosphere and foster a greater sense of place. There's already ample car access and parking in surrounding area. I hope that future iterations may be bolder in their placemaking ambitions. Despite these shortcomings, I encourage council to pass this ordinance." Juan Pablo Ponce de Leon wrote, "My name is Pablo and I am a graduate student in architecture at Princeton University. This message is to voice my support for the ordinance for street widening and one-way vehicle conversion of Witherspoon Street. As a graduate architecture student who spends less time on campus and a significant amount of time around town, I can't help but notice the features of our built environment, including the generally sad state of a ubiquitous car-centered urbanism. The COVID pandemic has given us a greater appreciation for our shared public space and provided us with an opportunity to reevaluate how we build our streets, neighborhoods, and cities. The changes to Witherspoon Street would make it safer for pedestrians while continuing to enliven the segment for commercial and civic activities. I would like to voice my disappointment that this ordinance did not go as far as it could have. A protected bike lane and fully pedestrian Witherspoon would have created an even more enjoyable Princeton, one that is safer for the many bicyclists around town. Such a change would have sent a strong statement to other municipalities across New Jersey that look up to Princeton. I hope the council incorporates such feedback into future plans." And there are two more left. This is from Frank Arminate, the Alchemist and Barrister. "I am the business owner of the Alchemist and Barrister and the property owner of Balance Enterprises. I also represented at various meetings with the council, various business owners and property owners on Witherspoon Street, delineated to my letters to Planet Princeton, published December 7th, and Town Topics, published December 9th. All the individuals I represent, including myself, are business and/or property owners on the street. It should be noted at the meeting on December 7th that Brian Levinson, a resident of Princeton, started a petition which has accumulated over 1,000 signatures supporting full closure of Witherspoon Street from Nassau to Spring Street. In addition, the mayor and council read through several letters, approximately 10, that were in full support of a full closure of Witherspoon Street. Other speakers at the meeting were either for one lane or full closure, but the majority of people were for a full closure, not just one lane. The main points of the meeting were emphasizing the beautification, cleanliness, safety, pedestrian, and bike-friendly street design and flexibility of the Witherspoon thoroughfare. A completely closed street should have by ordinance of set times for deliveries and service vehicles controlled by bollards at the north and south end of Witherspoon from Nassau to Spring Street. It is therefore important that Witherspoon thoroughfare be built with flexibility. The key to flexibility is a street that has no curbs and runs from one building side to the other building side. That thoroughfare would allow for striping if one lane is utilized or non-utilization of striping if it is closed. Another important point is that the ordinance should set time periods for deliveries, garbage, pickup, etc., which should not interfere with the pedestrian walk, service of food and drinks along the thoroughfare. I've reconsidered my original proposal made on the meeting of December 7th for having one lane. However, since a huge majority are for full closure with one lane utilized when appropriate, I agree with this concept. We are a university town with the university directly across the street from the proposed Witherspoon thoroughfare. As we may have all read in the recent town topics of December 16th, Princeton has been given the silver level for the most bicycle-friendly town in the state of New Jersey. A closing of Witherspoon Street as indicated above will only enhance the ability of this biking trend. So let us keep Witherspoon Street a friendly thoroughfare for pedestrian and bikes. And the final word goes to Beth Rhoda of Elements Mistral. And she writes, thank you to all that worked hard to get Witherspoon Street businesses outdoor dining space this year. The cafe areas outside look great and were very welcoming. We got very good comments and our guests enjoyed not only our space, but also the spaces other businesses created as well. I support a pedestrian and small business friendly outdoor space on Witherspoon Street and having traffic limited to one lane with flexibility to close traffic for special events. The top section of Witherspoon pre-COVID was very congested to the point I avoided driving it completely. Only 1 or 2 cars ever got through the light at Nassau and Witherspoon, regardless if you were turning right or left due to pedestrians, and you were just sitting and idling traffic. The one lane plan seems like a great balance for businesses, delivering garbage needs, and pedestrians. I've lived in a few towns like Denver and Boulder, Colorado, and their pedestrian malls are very popular. I was always surprised Princeton never had one. Okay, I apologize for having to listen to me read all those emails. We understand that this is a hard meeting for some folks to be at. So we had, I think, an unusual high number of people send in their comments. Okay, so yeah, I just want to officially close the public hearing and bring it back to council. And I see that Councilman Cohen has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to respond to a couple of the public comments. First, I wanted to respond to Andrew Siegel that we really are not proposing a pedestrian mall here. We're proposing one-way traffic. And so his concerns about, you know, things that didn't work out for certain kinds of businesses in Somerville or Red Bank are really not relevant to this situation. And I just want to mention or emphasize that the current version of the design, which is still in process, has no loss of parking spaces. It has parking on both sides of Witherspoon Street. And I think that as we drill down into the details of the design, it really can avoid all or almost all of the negative impacts that people are concerned about. Saying that, I do have concerns about what the impact will be on Van Deventer. I realize how difficult Van Deventer is as a road right now. So I appreciated the comments from Jim Firestone and his partner. But I do want to again emphasize that the miracles of modern technology and Waze and other navigational program apps that we have on our smartphones really are going to end up directing people over to Harrison Street or to Alexander Street as ways to get out of town instead of Washington Road. And so I think while it'll take a little time, I think there will be a rebalancing and an easing of the difficulties that exist on Van Deventer right now. And then my last comment is that I just really am so happy to hear numbers of the commenters talking about flexible design, whether it's curbless design or special paving materials in Witherspoon Street. I think that having the flexibility to have the one-way traffic and service to the businesses that are absolutely crucial at the right times of day and right times of the week and right times of the year can also be altered to have temporary closures at times when traffic doesn't need to go through there and when we would be well served by having a fully pedestrianized street because of the needs of the businesses, the people, the visitors from out of town, all the pedestrians that we know we've seen in Princeton on a nice summer day in the past, and we're very hopeful that we'll see that again in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Prone-Lambros?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow on Council President Cohen's comments, this is a shared street design, and we have had many meetings with the business community, and I think that we've responded very well to the various concerns. This is a compromise that will allow the full service restaurants to have outdoor dining and flexibility. It will allow for parking. It will allow for traffic for the quick pickup in and out for curbside or quick run in to get a cup of coffee. We understand that those businesses on one side, on the Small World side, many of them don't have a back door, so they have to have deliveries. And you know, this is a first step tonight. After this, as municipal engineer Deanna Stockton and her team start to develop the actual layout of the street of a curbless design, we will look to talk to the businesses and get the response as far as where and how, you know, parking will work. But, you know, it's really exciting to hear this number, over 1,000 residents that want to have this outdoor dining. They want to have, they're calling it a pedestrian mall. It's not in essence really a pedestrian mall, it's a shared street design, but they want to have that type of ability to have outdoor dining. And those anchor full service restaurants, which all, by the way, support this design, they are anchors to bring in for the retailers, the business, and for the coffee shop and the sandwich shop and the ice cream shop, for all of that to be part of this community. So I think it's really important that we're responding to what the patrons of the businesses want as well. And you know, I'm concerned when I hear that certain retailers don't want it, where, you know, where I've talked to people that were really excited about it. So I just want to make sure that, you know, I emphasize that we are beginning a process that we're going to work together. And I think we're listening to your concerns, and we will continue to respond to those concerns. And I think that on the traffic side, there's some good mitigation that the traffic study has brought to light. We have to avoid having people just circle and circle so that they can find that perfect spot right in front of their establishment where they're going. So the wayfinding and getting people into the garages is really important. So we are doing this as a process. I think it was Jessica Dury that said, you know, are we doing this as a master plan? And the answer is yes. I mean, we're looking at the whole permit parking, parking in garages. We're looking at this as a holistic approach. So we're not just doing this one piece and then walking away, but this is an approach that we're doing together. So I just want to say that this is the beginning, and I certainly appreciate everyone's input, and we'll continue to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from council? Mr. Williamson?
Yeah, I'll start by saying my inclination is to support Plan B, which is what the ordinance is designed around tonight. But something that Councilman Cohen said earlier, he said that he doesn't understand the concerns of folks who talk about this being a pedestrian only promenade. But we have to remember that depending on design flexibility, there are possibilities of Plan D where it is pedestrian only inside of that, right? So not to say I necessarily agree with those who say a closed pedestrian promenade will be bad for some businesses. I just wanted the public to know that with the design we're talking about, there can be times of Plan D. So if any of their concerns are legitimate, it can happen. So I just disagree. Even though I agree with most of what Council President Cohen said, I disagree that when he said that the concerns are not legitimate, because we can have times where it's just closed off. That said, I find myself still in support of the ordinance tonight, but I'm still, I must admit, I'm still moved by some of the comments, particularly by David Newton. I was wondering, in all these studies, I saw the traffic study, et cetera, if we ever really looked at the examples that happen in other towns, how that affected their retail businesses. And I understand there are other issues going on. Of course, we have COVID going on. There's the competition with Amazon, et cetera. But I wonder if we really did look at how businesses were really affected in these other towns where this happened.
Yeah, and I remember at our last meeting at introduction, Councilman Niedergang gave a mini report on some of the research she had done on this and some of the lessons learned from places where it did work and where it didn't work. And I don't know if Eva, you have that on your fingertips tonight. If you can give us the highlights.
I'm gonna have to try to recall. So yeah, there were a few. So I'll have to say that this was, I did a bunch of reading on pedestrian malls, and as many people have indicated, that's not exactly what we're having at all. We're having a one-way street with flexibility that can at times be closed. But given that that's not exactly the criteria, a lot of the malls that were created that didn't do well were created in downtowns where nobody lived. So we have several criteria that make Princeton a more potentially successful place to focus on more pedestrian traffic. So one is that we're a college town. Two is that it's a very short space. I think it was like 1 to 2 blocks as opposed to like half a mile or something like that, what tended to be much more successful. The fact again that people live in the area, and let's see if I can remember and the size of the town. I think it was under 100,000 people. And Ingela, who was on before, talked about Santa Monica. Santa Monica has the beach. We don't have the beach, sadly. So draws like that are very unique also tend to make a more pedestrian area successful, but we do have several of those criteria. Another thing, and I mentioned this also a couple of weeks ago, Councilwoman Perrin Lambros and I spoke with both the borough administrator in Somerville, and then who connected us to one of the merchants who has a chocolate shop on their pedestrian mall. Now, before their pedestrian mall came in, businesses were fleeing. Their vacancy rate was very, very high. And with the pedestrian mall, it's been a resurgence. And I know that there are some things that are similar between us and Somerville, size, for example, and some things that are not similar. But I specifically did ask about a coffee shop. They do have an artisanal coffee shop on the mall that people have to, you know, park and walk to, that apparently is thriving, and a chocolate shop, which also is not, it's not outdoor dining. It's someplace you walk, you go in, you discover it. You go in, you buy a lot of chocolate. At least if you're me, you buy a lot of chocolate. And so I think that I found these conversations reassuring, specifically for some of the merchants that have expressed concerns about this. And change is scary. I think we've talked about that a little bit, and no one can guarantee to you, and this is your livelihood and your business, no one can guarantee that this is going to work. On the other hand, there are changes all around us that are affecting our businesses, you know, Amazon, big warehouse stores, things like that, that are also going to be putting pressure on so many of our retail businesses. If we can create a fun and dynamic place to be, then people will come for that, and then they will shop while they're there. And I really, you know, kudos to the engineering department for coming up with a great dynamic, flexible plan that will allow us to do what some residents have asked for. We can, you know, close on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon. We can experiment. We can see what works and what doesn't work. You know, there's a risk in everything, and there's a risk in that. And I just want to, again, echo what Councilwoman Fern-Lambros, you know, I hope that you see us, even if you don't agree with the step we're taking tonight, and my inclination is also to support this ordinance. I hope you continue to engage with us and to see us as partners and to educate us about your concerns and your needs. And certainly to me, that's very, very important. So please keep the dialogue open, and thank you for your passion and your concern for our community.
Thanks. Ms. Sachs?
Yes, Mayor, I just wanted to talk about the schedule, because I know a number of businesses who are here tonight expressed concern about the rollout of this. And I think that's a legitimate concern given where we are with COVID. And my sense is that this is not something that's starting tomorrow. That what I understood from the DOT is that it's going to be at least 9 to 12 months before approval from DOT would even be possible. And then I think there are, you know, a number of other things a number of other steps that would need to happen. So, and I'm sure that the town, that's correct, Deanna? Yeah.
That's correct.
And I'm sure that the town, I hope, would be sensitive in dealing with the, you know, in coming to terms with the schedule that makes sense with the businesses on the street. So anyway, just for people who are new to this issue, and also for businesses who have concerns, this is not, the shovels are not going in tomorrow after this vote. And hopefully COVID will be in the history books by the time we're even starting on the actual construction of this. Speaking of history, you know, this has been definitely something that council members have had to think a lot about. And I went back to do some reading about Heinz Plaza and when that first came into being, because that is a public space that now I think we take for granted, and it's beloved and you know, a central gathering point for the community. And I think people can't imagine Princeton without Heinz Plaza. So I was interested to read about what some of the opinions in town were when Heinz Plaza was being discussed and proposed. And I was struck by how the comments opposing this are virtually identical to the comments that from people who opposed Heinz Plaza, and for many of the same reasons. And there were many business owners who were quoted at the time as saying that it would be the end of downtown Princeton, that it would be the end of any productive retail business in Princeton. And I think we can see that that didn't happen. So not to minimize the concerns of the businesses, especially during this difficult time, but I think we can look to the example of Heinz Plaza that was a plus, and the in particular the restaurants that are located on Heinz Plaza have really thrived even during this difficult COVID period. So I'm glad for other restaurant owners further up the street to have that opportunity of proximity to a public space. Finally, as someone who grew up in Princeton when there were basically 2 restaurants, neither of which had edible food, I am really excited that this will hopefully spawn even more restaurants, because I love living in a town now where we actually have many choices of good food, and I hope this will lead to even more. And I do hope it won't constrain the retail market, and the scenario that Andrew Siegel presented was certainly not what we would ever want to happen in the center of our town. And so I look forward to working with Mr. Siegel and others to make sure that that doesn't happen. So.
Thank you. Those are all excellent points. And I just wanted to finesse your first point about the timing. So although it doesn't mean that the shovels are going in the ground after we vote on this ordinance, one of the reasons why it's important to vote on it tonight is that there's a lot of work involved in the actual design and engineering of the street. And there's a big decision here about whether the street is 2 ways or whether it's 1 way and in which direction. And that decision is the sort of first major sort of building block that then the design can be laid on top of. So while the construction is still a long ways off, there's a lot of engineering work that needs to get done in the interim. And so that's why it's important that's why this is in front of council tonight, although we appreciate it's a difficult time to be holding this public hearing. I also just wanted to echo the thanks that have been given sort of all around. I want to thank Councilman Prone Lambros for really being so many of the boots on the ground to help get this the COVID version of the street up and running, and also our internal compliance committee that's worked with the businesses to make sure that they could get set up on the street, and to give the community a sense of what this looks like and how it could work. I want to thank the engineering department for coming up with a really great flexible solution that is really exciting. And there's been just tremendous community engagement on this issue. Not surprisingly, I think Witherspoon is one of the streets in town where everybody feels some ownership over it, and everybody has a connection and a relationship and cares about what the future of it will be. And the last time Witherspoon had major work done to it was something like 30 years ago. So the ordinance we passed tonight and the work that will be being done on the street, we have to think not just for the next 5-10 years, but really for the next 3 decades of putting in place, the traffic pattern and the design and everything else that is going to help support our downtown through all of the changes that are, we're not immune to what's happening and nationally and globally in terms of retail and changes to consumer behavior. And we want to have the flexibility to best support a healthy downtown all around. So, clearly it's a partnership, and I'm not going to be here, but the council will and the engineering department will be, I'm sure, is going to continue to work hand in hand with with the business community and the residents to make sure this turns out to be a really wonderful project. So I want to thank everybody. Okay, with that, is there a motion from council? There's a motion from Ms. Pearl-Lambros to pass the ordinance, and it's seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Ms. Sachs, did you have a comment? You were just raising
No, just
your hand
offering
a second.
second.
Okay, all right.
Raised a second.
And Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Pearl-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs.
Yes.
Okay, the ordinance passes unanimously, and thanks everybody, and more to come on this project and also on the rest of the Witherspoon Street design and construction project. Just from Lambros?
I just want to say thank you, Mayor Lambert, for all your leadership in this process, and to the staff as well, but just a special thanks to you.
Thanks. Yes, that
Thank
was
you.
okay. All right, so moving on, next we come to ordinance 2020-52, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton amending section 2215 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974 to exclude indoor gyms and fitness facilities from the limitations on hours of operation applicable to businesses in residential zones and on properties abutting residential zones. And just in brief, this is amending our hours of operation ordinance to make an adjustment that makes it a little more flexible for 24-hour gyms to move in. And in some ways, a response to what Ms. Pearl-Lambros was talking about earlier in terms of taking a look at our zoning and what we allow and what we don't allow to make it a little more flexible. So with that, I'd like to open up the public hearing on this ordinance. And if you'd like to make a comment as part of the public hearing, if you could please raise your hand. And seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to council and ask if there's a motion to approve. Moved by Ms. Fraga, seconded by Ms. Pearl-Lambros. Any comments or questions from council? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Pearl-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs.
Yes.
So this ordinance has been passed unanimously. Next is ordinance 2020-53, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton increasing the FAR limitation in the SC Shopping Center District and amending the schedule of zoning regulations in section 10B 246 of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. And there is a slight change in some of the wording of this ordinance, and I wanted to ask Council President Cohen to just review what that is.
Sure. So basically, the revision that we're proposing is an exception to the 10-foot required parking setback against residential districts. The exception would be along the AH5 district, which is the currently vacant lot at the north of the shopping center. And the reason for making this change is that there's a sliver of land that's being carved off from the shopping center and added to the vacant lot to facilitate best development of that corner lot. And when that sliver of land is carved off, the ring road around the shopping center turns out or ends up being right up against the property line. So that's the change. It's very minor. It's not intended to create any new sorts of development on the shopping center, but merely to allow what's there currently to continue to exist in a variance-free condition.
Unmuted. Thank you. I'd like to open up the, well, first of all, are there any questions from council before we open up the public hearing on this ordinance? And seeing none, I'd like to open up the public hearing on this ordinance. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council and ask if there's a motion to approve with the changes that were described by Mr. Cohen. Moved by Mr. Cohen, seconded by Ms. Sachs. Any further comment or questions? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
And this ordinance passes unanimously. And next we come to ordinance 2020-54, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton amending ordinance number 2020-21 to increase the maximum permitted density in the AH05 Affordable Housing Overlay -5 zoning district from 7 dwelling units per acre to 7.5 dwelling units per acre. Are there any questions from council on this? Mr. Cohen?
Not a question, but I just want to clarify, this was explained upon introduction, but for anybody who wasn't present at that meeting, I wanted to clarify that, again, this is not intended to allow greater density of development for the residential project that's set to go in the AH05 zone. Rather, because we're carving off this sliver of land that I referred to before, the size of the remaining shopping center property is reduced. So if you have the same number of residential units on a smaller amount of land, it slightly increases the density. And so again, this ordinance is just to permit what is already planned development on the shopping center lot to go ahead without having to be changed.
Okay, thank you. I would like to open up the public hearing for this ordinance. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council and ask if there's a motion to approve. Moved by Ms. Sachs, seconded by Mr. Cohen. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
And this ordinance passes unanimously. Next is ordinance 2020-55, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton modifying the zone boundary line between the SC Shopping Center District and the AH5 Affordable Housing District and amending the zoning map of the Township of Princeton. Are there any questions or comments on this from council? Mr. Cohen?
Again, just to refer this back, this is really one of 3 ordinances that are all related to the same change. When we carve off the sliver of the shopping center lot to add it to the corner, to the vacant lot for development, this just turns that sliver of land into a part of that zone, the AH5 zone, which exists already on the corner lot. So.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council before we open up the public hearing? Okay, I would like to open up the public hearing on this ordinance. We did receive one email that I'm going to read, but I want to take the verbal comment first. So if you'd like to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand. Seeing no one, I'm going to read the email we received from Joanne S. Haggerty. As a 40+ year property owner at 386 North Harrison Street, Princeton, I object to the adoption of this ordinance to expand the AH5 affordable housing zoning by 1.04 acres. The reason for this ordinance is to increase the housing density, which is already completely unacceptable for the neighborhood. There have been a number of ordinances which have been proposed and adopted in a piecemeal and secretive fashion to create a very densely populated, high-impact series of housing structures in the 1 mile and and 0.3 mile rectangle formed by the shopping center, including the SC AH 5 zone and the AH 5 zone empty lot in the AH 7 zone. This is the first notice I have received, and I missed review of Ordinance 2020-19, which was adopted in the summer to change the empty lot to zoning AH 5. I was not notified about AH 7. These zoning ordinances are entirely unacceptable in building density, height, traffic impact, environmental impact, and not in keeping with the housing character of the neighborhood. Based on all of these ordinances in total, the town is proposing approximately 340 housing units to get 70 to 72 affordable units to meet the affordable housing goals. This is being done in a very small area with total disregard to existing residents and their quality of life. The height proposals are 3 to 4 stories from 45 to 65 feet. Note, when Sunrise proposed an assisted living facility in the AH5 area with approximately 84 units, they agreed to only 2 stories. These units would be built on land which is generally higher than the surrounding neighborhood homes. In addition, this housing density will result in over 500 additional cars that will use North Harrison Street, Terhune Street, and possibly Grover Avenue. And let's not forget the subsequent burden of even more students on the school system. I understand the need for more affordable housing. However, I don't see the need to have all of it located right at the shopping center. We need development of 100% affordable housing complexes and do not need to add more market housing to meet our goals of affordable housing. In addition, I am sure that there is land available in other parts of town to help meet our needs. Again, I object to these plans in totality, and I'm very concerned about the way this has been done with no regards for the taxpaying residents of these neighborhoods. Okay, and is there anybody?
Mayor, before there's a motion or a vote, I just wanted to point out there is one typo in the ordinance. It appears in a couple of places. Some numbers got transposed, and the boomerang, it's not 1.04 acres. It should read 1.40 acres. Just want to make that correction to the ordinance before it's voted on.
Okay.
And also just to the point of the letter that we received, this ordinance is not increasing the density, right? David, that's not what this ordinance is about. I just want you to reiterate what you said. It's actually.
Yes, it does not increase the density in the zone.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of these decisions were made and we had a lot of public comment and a lot of public discussion when we were going through the affordable housing ordinance changes. And I'm sorry if you're just tuning in now. We did try to do as much outreach as we could to involve people in that process. Okay, so is there, I'm going to close the public comment and bring it back to council. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Ms. Pearl-Lambros, seconded by Mr. Cohen. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Pearl-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Braga?
Yes.
Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
And the ordinance passes unanimously. And now we've come to the conclusion of our public hearings for actually for the year for 2020. And now we're moving on to resolutions. First resolution tonight is 2402, resolution authorizing and directing the Princeton Planning Board to conduct a preliminary investigation to determine whether certain properties located on Terhune Road, North Harrison Street, and Clearview Avenue meet the criteria for designation as a non-condemnation redevelopment area. And this was something that was explained a little bit at the top of the meeting by Council President Cohen. I don't know if there's any questions or comments from council, or if there's a motion to approve.
Moved by Ms. Niedergang, seconded by Mr. Cohen. Any comments or questions here? All in favor?
That was actually, I actually had a comment, but I'm
Oh,
happy to
sorry.
move it. My comment
Okay.
is just a plea when things like this show up in the future, that a map for those of us who don't necessarily know where Councilman Cohen was very happy to explain to me where some of the things were. I don't always understand what lot numbers are. Addresses help, but just in the future, I find the maps that are often attached to a lot of the resolutions and ordinances to be just make life so much easier. I think not only for me, but for the residents as well. So just a plea for maps. Okay, that's it.
Good point.
Great suggestion.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next, we come to 2403, resolution authorizing a contract in the not to exceed amount of $80,300 for a 12-month term to Greater Mercer Transportation Management Association, GMTMA, for crosstown transportation services. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Ms. Niedergang, seconded by Ms. Fraga. Any comments or questions on this ordinance? Ms. Niedergang?
Just a thank you to Deanna Stockton for getting this done and turned around so quickly. Really appreciated.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 2404, resolution authorizing a one-year extension of a contract with Eastern Armored Services Incorporated in the not to exceed amount of $100,224 for 2021 armored car services contract. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Cohen. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Williamson. Are there any comments or questions on this, Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I just wanted to flesh out. I had a question about whether the amount of this contract was reduced at all to reflect the fact that our municipal offices have been closed during the COVID period and are likely to remain closed for quite a while. So in theory, it should require fewer pickups by the armored car to deal with cash receipts at those locations. And maybe Mr. DeShield could address that question.
Absolutely. The contract is based on the full year and full services. However, with the reduced services, we have been receiving a discount from the armored car company for our reduced services that we're receiving.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Sachs?
And can I ask what we're receiving cash for?
Includes cash that we receive for parking, all of the parking meter cash that goes out, things like that sort.
I see. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Ms. Pern-Lambros, did you have your hand up or no? Okay. This has been moved and seconded, I think. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, resolution passes unanimously. Next is 2405, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement in the not to exceed amount of $54,400 with T&M Associates for annual inspection services at the Princeton landfill, including gas and groundwater sampling and testing services and reporting to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Cohen. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Any comments or questions on this ordinance? Ms. Sachs?
Yeah, there've been a number of questions about the environmental cleanup process on the site and questions about the amount of money that is being expended for that. And I am wondering if maybe Mr. DeShield might want to, or whoever might want to just explain. Would be helpful to know. I think we voted on an expenditure last week that was fairly significant, and what the difference between that is and what this is, and just so the public understands what exactly this is about.
Correct. There are actually two separate issues. Last week, we had a contract for the cleanup on the River Road site. The River Road site has two locations. One is a DPW yard, in the rear was a former landfill that has been closed. Because it has been closed, we do have some obligations in terms of the management and maintenance of that landfill and the closure of that landfill. This contract is for the landfill, which is a separate project in a separate location from the dumping that occurred on the River Road site. This has been a process that we've been on for a number of years in terms of doing the landfill closure activities.
Got it. Thanks, Mark.
Ms. Niedergang?
And that, just, Mr. Dushia, what, or maybe Ms. Dr. News, what is the length of time after a landfill gets closed that it has, is there a point at which it becomes safe, or is it a forever monitoring? Well, how long are we in this for?
I think so. Typically, it's about a 20 to 30 year process after a landfill is closed. And in the process of some of the work that was done a few years ago, we actually identified that the landfill was a little bit larger than known at the time of the closure. So we're also working with DEP to address that piece in the closure plan.
Was this as a result of the solar array work that we learned about that, or?
I'm not sure that
Believe it
was,
was.
it may have been, but I think it was also just in the monitoring process as well.
Thank you for that context.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 2406. Resolution authorizing a professional services agreement in an amount not to exceed $23,390 with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services for environmental consulting services at the property known as Building C, South Tulane Street, NJDEP SRP 163810. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Cohen, seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Any questions or comments on this resolution? Ms. Sachs?
Could we have just a brief explanation of this?
I will do my best. In the former borough, when redevelopment of the property that is bounded by South Tulane and Spring Street, so it's currently in the area, say, of D'Angelo's. It's on the north side of the Tulane parking yard, and the northern boundary is Spring Street. It's municipal property. When the redevelopment work was occurring, they found historic fill on the property, and then through the process of constructing on the property, there were also some underground storage tanks that were found. So at the time, they cleaned up the site, they capped the remaining material that stayed on site. Everything was proceeding through the proper channels until about 2012. Borough Council passed a resolution to support the establishment of a deed notice on the property as well. And it appears that somewhere after 2012, the final pieces to close the file with DEP and get it kind of into that closure state like the landfill didn't occur. And so we are working now to take care of all of that paperwork that is necessary to close DEP's file and have it be a permitted site. And that again is another location that it will have to remain that way in perpetuity. So every couple of years, once the closure is done, we will be doing inspection reports, and we have to keep a licensed site remediation professional assigned to the property so that if anything comes up, DEP knows the process to work through.
I'd like to point out that the person who we're hiring worked on the site until 2012. So we're going full circle, and he'll certainly know what was going on there. So that seemed like a smart move.
Right. Yes, there is some experience within the project team that they have worked on it since all of this started.
And was there something that triggered this new activity on the site?
So we have annually been paying a fee to DEP for the site, and recently we had gotten a few notices that we did not have a licensed site remediation professional assigned to our site, and companies were starting to reach out to us to assist with us. At the same time, the leaseholder for the property is looking to, I think, remortgage the property and needs.
Who's that?
That is JM Group, or it was NHKT is the developer. And so in order to refinance, they needed to make sure that the environmental issues at the property are dealt with. And so that's where it was brought back to our attention that this was something that we need to take care of. As far as we know, we do not have any violation notice against us, but it is noted that we need the LSRP and to finalize the deed notice and these other steps that are described in the proposal.
Okay, so got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any final questions or comments on this resolution? And if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. This next resolution I mentioned at the top of the meeting, we're going to be holding. I do want to thank the engineering department and everybody who was involved in the consultant and producing this report. Hopefully we can get it up so people can take a look at it in the interim, and then council can have the full presentation in January, and people have a little more time to digest it before it comes to council. Okay, the next one is 2408, resolution authorizing and directing to enter into a use and occupancy agreement with Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad, PFARS, for 14 Clearview Avenue. And is there a motion to approve? Moved by Ms. Brown-Lambros, seconded by Mr. Williamson. Are there any questions or comments on this ordinance from council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 2409, resolution authorizing the purchase of 5 sets of rescue tank force personnel protective equipment, PPE, from Gall's Uniforms in the amount of $22,996.65. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Ms. Fraga, seconded by Ms. Pearl-Lambros. Any questions or comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. This next resolution, 2410, we're going to be holding because of some contracting issues, so that will be coming back to council at a later meeting. Next is 2411, resolution rejecting bid for traffic signal maintenance and construction services contract. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Cohen, seconded by Ms. Pearl-Lambros. Any questions or comments on this ordinance? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 2412, resolution extending contract term for traffic signal electrical maintenance and construction services contract in the not to exceed amount of $16,000 to Cray Electric for a 2-month term ending on February 28th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Cohen, is seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Any questions or comments on this resolution, Mr. Cohen?
I assume this is connected with the bid that we rejected, that we need somebody to continue maintaining our traffic signals while we're getting it out to bid again.
Yes, correct. If you recall, about 4 years ago, Mercer County returned the signal maintenance back to all of the municipalities within the county. And so we had undertaken a bid at that time. The bid has expired or will expire at the end of the year. And the bid that we received was higher than our budget. So we are extending our contract with Cray Electric until we can either go out to bid or evaluate possibly just utilizing quotes instead, depending on the amount of the contract.
Great, thank you for that explanation. Any other questions or comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. And finally, 2413, resolution awarding agreement to John Hart Farms LLC for deer processing services. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Cohen. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Niedergang. Any questions or comments on this ordinance? Mr. Cohen?
I just want to remind my colleagues on council that for the past couple of years, John Hart has been coming and sort of scolding us for not using him to process our deer carcasses. I'm excited that we're doing this because the meat that comes from processing will go to local food banks instead of sort of remote North Jersey food banks, which was the case with the previous processors. So just wanted to share that information.
Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any other questions or comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. And now we come to the consent agenda, which contains items of a routine nature passed by single vote. Are there any items anybody would like removed from the consent agenda? And if, oh, Ms. Niedergang?
I don't really want to remove it. I just wanted to make one comment. Is that possible, or do we need to?
I think we're supposed to remove it to make the comment.
Okay,
Is it?
hold on. The 2420 about Mary Moss Playground.
Okay. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 2420? Moved by Ms. Fraga. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Niedergang. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is approved. And now we come to the final resolution of this evening, 2420. Resolution authorizing a final change order for improvements to Mary Moss Playground in the amount of $84,665 for final construction project cost of $709,739, acceptance of the improvements at Mary Moss Playground, and release of performance bond number NAVI 00001850 to V&K Construction Incorporated. And to get it on the table, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Ms. Fraga. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Niedergang. And I see Ms. Stockton there.
I just really wanted to extend my compliments. We often comment on things that go over budget. This is something that came in significantly under budget. So I just wanted to compliment the company that did the work in our engineering department, but wanted to get that on the record. So thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I second
Great
that.
job too. And
it's such a great playground.
it is.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was a challenging, it was a challenging project to make sure that we saved what was really important about that playground, which was the trees, and to still have something fun there for the kids to play on. And
Absolutely.
great job all around. So thank you. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cohen, seconded by Ms. Lambros. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Right.